Hi, I'm Peter Van Deusen. Today I'm going to give you a quick tour of Brain-Trainer International's major upgrade of our assessment of the energy brain, which also produces a customized whole brain training plan. 30 years ago, Brain-Trainer International, or BTI, was formed in Atlanta, Georgia. Since then, we've linked with companies in Brazil, Latin America, Australia, and the European Union. Throughout the years and changes, BTI's mission has remained to make sophisticated, customized brain training easy, convenient, and affordable for people and organizations worldwide. You'll find the Brain Trainer system in professional offices, in businesses and institutions, in homes, and on the internet. BTI's promise that you don't have to be sick to want to get better, of changing your life by training your brain as you train your body, is personal. We've all started by training our own brains and working with many others. Our software, hardware, and training are designed to simplify the life of the trainer and make the training more engaging for the client. We don't just sell the system, we use it. By trainers, for trainers. That's what makes BTI unique. What drives BTI's whole brain training system is its assessment of the patterns in each individual brain and its training plan customized for each one. The TQ, our QEEG for trainers, has gone through multiple generations over the past 20 years. Like standard QEEG brain maps, the TQ gathers information about the energy from 20 different sites. However, the TQ doesn't compare your brain against averages from a database. Instead, it scans each brain for a range of patterns that have been identified by research. These patterns are markers for issues in an individual's mood, thinking, self-control, performance, and even physiological problems like sleep, digestion, pain, and many others. It guides each client to identifying and prioritizing the real-world changes they want to make in their lives. It recommends a detailed roadmap to what and where to train in each session. Unlike many training approaches, whole brain training does not just deal with a few symptoms. The whole brain training plan's goal is to change all the key training goals and guide each brain toward the patterns that have been recognized as peak performance states. Our current TQ, version 7, has been the centerpiece of whole brain training for nearly a decade. It's used by more than 1,000 trainers in dozens of states and nations around the world. Today, however, I want to introduce the Trainer's Q version 8, TQ8. So how has TQ8 made whole brain training even better? First, where prior versions of the TQ have been built around Microsoft Excel, the TQ8 does not require any extra software. It's completely self-contained, making it faster, easier to upgrade as new brain patterns or training approaches are identified. Prior versions of the TQ have required users to go through a multi-step process to install copy protection, so it could only be used on one computer. Users of the TQ8 will buy a license key to activate it on a main computer where you can process training plans, but you can install additional copies on other computers that allow you to do everything except send the data for processing. The TQ8 has additional tools to support its auto artifacting function. Almost immediately, it will advise the trainer if re-recording one or more of the specific sites would be desirable before the client is released from the training chair. Unlike traditional QEEGs, which must be sent off for costly, time-consuming processing against a database, The TQ8 processes and cleans your data on your computer immediately after you record it at no additional cost. Then, with one click, the files are sent to BTI's TQ server, where they're processed into an assessment and training plan and returned in a few seconds. Since the server contains all the calculations and algorithms, it can be revised whenever new brain patterns or training approaches are identified without having to install updates. The changes are immediately applied to every following assessment. TQ8 users will be able to go from recording an assessment to beginning to train literally in minutes. The TQ8's options page and training plans can give you an automatic optimized plan or allow you to manually define one yourself. New views like the weights and goals pages simplify trainers' choices if they prefer to produce their own plans, and the TQ8 includes special customizable plans for autistic spectrum that can be used without recording brain patterns. Prior versions of the TQ have required purchase of an expensive piece of software. The TQ8 will continue BTI's work to reduce the cost of brain training by shifting to a subscription system. Users will be able to purchase licenses for 4 months, 12 months, or 24 months of unlimited use at prices well below half the cost of purchasing. Once you've purchased your TQ8 license, you'll receive a link to download the TQ8 installer by entering your key. The key can be installed on one computer, giving access to the TQ8 server. However, the software can be installed on additional computers without the key. These versions will allow users on multiple systems to test the quality of recordings and to open completed training plans. Simply click the option to install without license key on these secondary systems. Let's go through the steps for quickly and easily loading assessment data into the TQ8 once you've installed it. After installing, you should see an icon on your desktop for TQ8. To open the program, simply double-click the icon and you should see the opening page. In the upper left corner, you'll see menus and buttons for the two most common tasks: to load a new data set or to open a completed assessment. Let's begin by loading the file set for a trainee. You'll notice the Show Options button in the upper left of the screen, and that allows you to set preferences for the program. After you've used TQ8 several times, you may prefer to focus on just a few views or remove some that you rarely use. Just uncheck the pages you don't need, and they'll no longer appear when you open a file. Of course, you'll always be able to return to the options and add them back in or remove others if you change your mind. Below that upper section, you'll be able to set the program to assume that you're using a 4-channel amplifier, which is the default mode, or if you're using a 2C amp, you can make that your default here. Then click Save, and you'll be back to the Load Dataset page. The loading page will allow you to select dataset. Navigate to the assessment folder on your computer. Make sure this folder contains a completed client report and the recordings of the brain patterns. You may not see any files in the folder. Click to select the folder and you should see the files listed in the window. If these are complete and correct, click to process data. TQ8 will produce the artifacting page. The artifacting page will allow you to judge the quality of your data. Ideally, at least the blocks in the eyes closed and eyes open heads across the top of the page should be green. If they're not, try clicking in the Auto Artifact button. If there are files that are close to the targets in the upper right corner, Auto artifact may enable them to pass. In this case, the adjusted artifacting values have allowed all the data to pass. If this does not occur, you may try manually adjusting the thresholds. Be aware that by doing so, you may allow significant amounts of artifact to enter the assessment and make the plan less accurate. When you click the Send to Server button, you'll see a notification telling you what sites will not be processed and suggesting you re-record the sites with bad data. Ideally, you can perform these steps immediately at the end of recording the assessment prior to removing the electrodes from the client. That will allow you to re-record the problem sites and rerun the artifacting. Remember that this can be done on any installed version of TQ8, even if it's not the one that will actually send the data for processing. When artifacts have been removed and there is enough clean data to analyze, click the Send to Server button. BTI's TQ8 server will process and analyze the brain's patterns, providing multiple views of data. It will produce a detailed, customized, written summary of the results. It will produce a detailed 5-block training plan, and it will return all this to the trainer's computer, normally in seconds. TQ8 can be used by a beginning trainer. Its ability to remove artifact and produce detailed training plan automatically provides a specific roadmap to sophisticated training in seconds. However, some trainers may wish to form their own opinions. For them, the availability of pages that provide a variety of views of the brain are a great resource. The TQ8 screen includes a series of tabs across the bottom of the page. Clicking on a tab shows its view. The white tabs on the left show the summary reports and plans that guide your training decisions. The green tabs show various views of the energy brain. Clicking on one of them will display the brain's patterns in a unique way. Remember that the TQ does not display data telling you how your brain patterns compare against averages. It shows the actual relationships between frequencies and sites in the client's brain. Some of the tabs are data-oriented, tables, such as the Analyze, Synchrony, Report, and Weights tabs. They show numerical comparisons, often with some numbers in red, higher than expected, or bold red, strongly higher than expected. Black values are within the expected range. Blue or bold blue numbers are lower or strongly lower than expected. There are also graphical displays, including histograms, maps, and heads, as well as symmetry and variance for those who prefer seeing the relationships in this way. The TQ8 shows the brain's values in both absolute and relative formats. For example, the histograms page shows the level of each frequency in microvolts, while the maps tab shows the percent of each frequency at each site. The menus in the upper left-hand corner indicate the language currently being used. Pull down the menu and choose the language you prefer, and the assessment will change to that language. The TQ8 initially includes English, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, and German versions. The histograms view compares each pair of homologous sites, such as C3 and C4. You can see how amplitudes in microvolts change from frequency to frequency. They also show how these patterns change from eyes closed, the blue bars, to eyes open, the green bars, to task. To the right of the graphs is a set of checkboxes that allows the trainer to turn on or off any of the states. For example, if you only want to see eyes open, or to include or exclude a hemisphere. The maps view shows a head for each frequency band and each state. In the sample above, The task data was not recorded, so those maps are blank. The nose is at the top and the ears on the sides of each head, so you're looking down at the top of the head. The maps are colored from cooler to hotter colors as the percent of the total EEG and the specific frequency increases. For example, in these maps, we can see a bright spot at T6 in the 2 to 4 Hz delta band. Comparing the colors with the legend on the right, we can see that the red areas indicate that 25% of the entire EEG at that site was in the delta band. The white area indicates that 35% of the entire EEG was in delta there. These maps are useful for seeing how brain activity changes from eyes closed to open to task, but they also clearly show where slow or fast alpha frequencies activate with eyes closed and block with eyes open or at task. Maps are also useful for seeing results of past head injuries. When there is a bright spot in delta that remains in all three states, that may indicate a white matter injury. The same kind of finding in alpha frequencies may indicate a gray matter injury. The reversals tab shows right, left, and front back reversals of beta on the left display and alpha on the right. A line for each site pair is colored to identify the sites. By clicking in the middle radio buttons, you can also see eyes closed and eyes open view. Or you can select to see only strong reversals or all reversals or all site pairs. Ideally, the lines are expected to be in the white area of each graph. They're expected to run up or down across the graph as the white area does. If bars are in the blue instead of a white, that suggests that the level of frequency, beta or alpha, is lower than expected. If they're in the red, they're higher than expected. The graphs show relationships between relative percent values for each ratio. The Heads tab allows trainers to look at both absolute amplitudes on the left head and relative amplitudes on the right head. The values are shown for each frequency at each site and can be shown with eyes closed, eyes open, or at task. These numbers, especially relative values, can easily show reversals or very high values in specific frequencies. The Synchrony tab shows the sites for which the TQ8's coherence or synchrony values are useful for training. The sites with dark cells are not used. Slow frequencies and gamma are expected to have values above 40 in coherence, while fast frequencies are expected to have values below 40. The legend on the right side of the page explains the coloring system. The Weight tab is new in TQ8. It's designed to allow the trainer to look at frequency patterns in the brain by clicking the tabs for fast, slow, middle, and reversals. Clicking the Fast tab shows a breakdown of sites where beta and high beta values with eyes closed and eyes open are indicated. To the right, the trainer can choose between looking at the right side, looking at the rear of the brain, the midline, or the temporal sites. These values are relative percents compared against the TQ8's thresholds. In effect, they are weights, with the highest being furthest from the expected level. The table is prioritized from the highest to lowest for the overall column. But by clicking on any one of the column titles, it can be reprioritized based on the values in that column. Quickly looking at slow and fast tabs usually clarifies which are the most important bands. The table on the right shows recommended training sites for 2 or 4 channels that meet the criteria selected above. For example, the trainer can select the right hemisphere and say the sites most valuable to train there. Changing to the rear button will change the recommended training sites to focus on those areas. The weight column allows trainers to compare between various training groups. The higher the weight, the greater the leverage that montage is likely to have. The waist page also indicates which frequency band is most important to train and whether eyes closed or eyes open are higher weighted. Clicking on a different category, for example, in this case switching to slow, will often show a nearly empty table, indicating that the slow frequencies have very little effect. In addition to the data views of the energy brain, the TQ8 provides reports and plans that can be used immediately without spending a lot of time reviewing patterns and analyzing, especially for new trainers or for those who are more interested in training than analysis. These white tabs are very valuable. They also include overviews of the brain and tools for establishing goals with the client and tracking results over time. The TQ8 Client Summary Report provides a custom written report of the patterns of activity in the client's brain, specifying the areas in which each pattern is found and the symptoms or behaviors that are likely to be related to each one. TQ8 adds graphics to summarize the relationship between slow, middle, and fast frequencies. It also shows the importance of various problem categories in the client's report. Another graph shows the strength of the various patterns that are likely to be training targets. The summary report can be a quick way for trainers to get a detailed overview of the client's brain. Some users send it to referral sources. Some share it with families or clients. The summary includes explanatory information about each area and measure of brain function, followed by findings which are specific to the client's brain in that category. The trainer can choose to include or exclude this explanatory material. By excluding this information, the summary report focuses strictly on specific results related to that client. Whole brain training does not focus on changes in EEG measures. Each client begins the process by prioritizing 145 specific symptoms from a wide range of areas such as mood, cognition or learning, performance, physiological issues such as sleep, pain, etc. The TQ8 evaluates the results of training in terms of real-world changes in training goals. The new Goals Report tab allows the trainer and client to start training by identifying 6 specific changes that are highly rated and measurable. At the end of each circuit of 5 blocks, the client re-rates those items and the TQ8 automatically graphs the results. At the end of training or at any point during the process, the comparison page allows graphing of changes in all categories and in the symptoms in each one of them.